The alarm bells rang across 7 different star systems at the exact same time. Something like this had never happened before in the 3,000 years of Galactic Council history. Every monitoring station from the outer rim to the core worlds picked up the same terrifying message. It came from Verdania Prime, a beautiful green world covered in endless gardens and crystal cities. The Cathara people who lived there were known throughout the galaxy as the gentlest beings alive. They grew the most amazing food and medicine using plants that could cure diseases other species thought impossible to heal. Their whole civilization was built around helping things grow and flourish, but now they were screaming for help. The message was simple and heartbreaking. Giant creatures had appeared in their skies without warning. These weren't just any monsters. They were the Void Swarm, the most feared enemy in known space. Wherever the swarm went, entire worlds died. They ate everything: plants, animals, even the soil and rocks. They left behind empty husks of planets floating in space like picked clean bones. The Cathara had watched helplessly as the first swarm ships landed on their northern continent. Within hours, vast forests that had grown for thousands of years were gone. The creatures moved like a living carpet across the land, consuming everything in their path. Cities vanished. Rivers dried up as the swarm drank them completely. Council Fleet Command ran the numbers immediately. The swarm's current consumption rate meant Verdania Prime had maybe 3 standard cycles before the planet became uninhabitable. That was barely enough time to evacuate a small city, let alone an entire world of 6 billion peaceful beings. The nearest Council fleet was 8 cycles away at maximum speed. Emergency sessions began in the Great Halls of Power. Representatives from dozens of species argued about what to do. Some wanted to send evacuation ships. Others said it was already too late. A few suggested using the ancient weapon protocols. But that would destroy the planet anyway. While politicians debated, a young technician named Cora was doing something much more important. She was tracking exactly where the distress signal had traveled. Radio waves spread out in all directions from their source, and she wanted to map every system that might have received the message. Most of the signal had reached civilized worlds where people felt sorry but couldn't help. Some reached empty space where no one heard anything at all. But one branch of the signal had traveled to a very special place, a place where the Council had put up warning beacons and forbidden all contact. The signal had reached Sol System. Sol was home to a species so dangerous that the entire galaxy had agreed to keep them isolated. These creatures called themselves humans, and they came from a world so hostile that just surviving there for one day would kill most other species. Their planet had crushing gravity, poisonous atmosphere, deadly weather, and creatures that existed only to hunt and kill. Worse yet, the humans themselves were the most dangerous things on their death world. They fought constant wars, created terrible weapons, and seemed to enjoy violence in ways that made other species sick with fear. The Council had quarantined them for good reason. But now, for the first time in 50 years, something had reached their isolated system. Kithra's desperate cry for help had traveled across space to the most feared warriors in the galaxy. Cora stared at her screen and wondered what the humans would do with this information. Would they ignore it? Would they see it as an opportunity to break free from quarantine? Or would they do something even worse? She had no way of knowing that deep in Sol System, people were already making plans. The communication array aboard the U.S. Defiance crackled to life at 0347 hours. Ship time. Admiral Kim was already awake, nursing her 3rd cup of coffee in the command center when the priority signal came through. She had learned long ago that bad news never waited for convenient hours. The message took 17 minutes to translate properly. Human computers had to work through layers of alien language protocols, mathematical conversions, and cultural context markers. When the final version appeared on her screen, Kim read it 3 times before the full horror sank in. 6 billion. Innocent people were about to die, and the only ones who could save them were sitting in committee meetings arguing about paperwork. Kim stood up slowly, her coffee cup forgotten on the console. Around her, the night shift crew continued their quiet work, unaware that everything was about to change. She walked to the main communication station and entered her personal authorization codes. Communications. Open a fleet-wide channel. Priority Alpha. All vessels, all personnel. The young officer at the station looked confused. Ma'am, it's the middle of sleep cycle for most ships. Shouldn't we wait until now, Lieutenant? Within minutes, every screen on every human ship in the fleet displayed Kim's face. Captains rolled out of their bunks. Engineers stopped their maintenance work. Marines paused their training exercises. 47 ships and nearly 30,000 people waited to hear what was so urgent it couldn't wait for morning. Kim didn't waste words. She read the translated message exactly as it came through, her voice steady but carrying an edge that made everyone pay attention. When she finished, dead silence filled the communication channels. Orders are simple, Kim continued. We're going to help them. All ships prepare for immediate departure to Verdania Prime. Department heads report readiness status within 2 hours. We launch at 0600. That's when Captain Lee's voice came over the secure command channel. Admiral, with respect, are you sure about this? Once we reveal our full fleet strength, there's no going back. The Council will know exactly what we're capable of. Kim looked out through the bridge windows at the distant stars. Somewhere out there, people were dying while politicians talked. Children were crying while bureaucrats filled out forms. Families were being torn apart while committees debated proper procedures. Lee, how long have we been stuck in this quarantine? 52 years, ma'am. 52 years of listening to them call us dangerous monsters? 52 years of being told we're too violent, too aggressive, too primitive to join galactic civilization? Kim's voice grew harder. Well, maybe they're right about one thing. We are dangerous, but not to innocent people who need help. She switched back to the fleet-wide channel. I don't care if they think we're monsters. I don't care if this breaks every treaty and protocol in council space. 6 billion people are going to die if we sit here doing nothing, and I will not let that happen. We don't abandon people who need help. We never have, and we never will. The response was immediate. Ship after ship reported ready status. Crews canceled leave and rushed to battle stations. Engineers began the complex process of spinning up quantum drives. Medical teams prepared for casualties. Marines checked their equipment one more time. Captain Lee's voice came back, but this time it was different. Admiral, the UES Retribution is ready for immediate departure, and ma'am, you're absolutely right. Let's go save some people. By 0600 hours, the entire Terran defense fleet was ready to jump. Their quantum drives could cover the distance to Verdania Prime in 4 cycles instead of the 8 required by Council technology. They would arrive with time to spare, but they would also arrive completely alone, facing an enemy that had destroyed hundreds of worlds. With no backup and no support from galactic civilization, Admiral, Kim gave the order anyway. The emergency klaxon aboard the Council flagship Asterisk Harmony of Stars Asterisk had never sounded quite so urgent before. Fleet Admiral Dex's 4 eyes snapped open as his sleeping chamber filled with flashing red light. His species didn't dream, but if they did, this would have been a nightmare. Admiral, we have a massive problem, came the voice of his communications. Officer, through the intercom, the humans are coming. Dex's blood went cold. In his 200 years of service, those were words he never expected to hear. The quarantine around Sol System had held for over 5 decades. The humans weren't supposed to leave their isolated corner of space. They certainly weren't supposed to be flying toward an active crisis zone with a full battle fleet. He rushed to the command center, his ceremonial robes barely fastened. The main display showed everything he feared most. 47 unknown vessel signatures were approaching Verdania Prime at impossible speeds. Their quantum signatures matched no known Council technology, but the readings were unmistakable. These ships were built for war. How long until they arrive? Thex asked, though he dreaded the answer. Based on their current speed, approximately 18 hours, sir. They'll reach Verdania Prime to full cycles before our main fleet. Around the command center, officers from 6 different species stood frozen in shock. Everyone knew stories about humans. They were the monsters that parents used to frighten children into good behavior. They came from a world so violent that simply breathing its air would kill most civilized beings. Their very existence violated every principle of peaceful galactic society. Ambassador Cole's voice crackled through the communication from his diplomatic vessel. Admiral Dex, you must turn those creatures away immediately. First contact protocols are clear. No quarantined species may participate in Council operations under any circumstances. With respect, Ambassador, I'm not. Sure, we have a choice, Dex replied. They're not asking for permission, they're simply coming. Then you must stop them by force, if necessary. The contamination risk alone, stop them with what? Dex's voice rose higher than was considered proper for his species. Our nearest combat vessels are still 4 cycles away. These humans will be engaging the Void Swarm in less than a day. Okay, we couldn't intercept them if we tried. Far below on Verdania Prime's surface, botanist Prime Nara pressed her face against the bioglass walls of her research facility. The view outside made her hearts ache with despair. Yesterday there had been a forest of singing trees older than her civilization. Now there was only bare dirt. The Void Swarm drones moved like living metal storms across the landscape, their harvesting appendages stripping away everything that had ever grown. Her people had no weapons. They barely understood the concept of violence. For 3,000 years, the Cathara had lived in perfect harmony with their world, growing beautiful things and sharing them freely with anyone who asked. Now they watched helplessly as everything they had ever loved was consumed by creatures that existed only to destroy. The emergency alert system in her laboratory suddenly chirped with new information. Her 6-fingered hands trembled as she read. The update. Ships were approaching. Someone had heard their distress call and was coming to help. For a moment, pure joy flooded through her entire being. Then she read the identification codes. The ships belonged to humans. Every Keitha child learned about humans in their basic education classes, though always with warnings about having nightmares. They were the Deathworld species that the Council kept locked away for everyone's safety. Stories said they fought endless wars for no reason except enjoyment. They created weapons designed specifically to cause maximum suffering. Their planet was so hostile that even their plants and animals tried to kill each other constantly. Now these legendary monsters were coming to Verdania Prime. Nara didn't know whether to feel grateful or terrified. Back in space, Admiral Vex watched the approaching human fleet and made a decision that would change galactic history forever. He opened a communication channel that had never been used before. The emergency first contact protocol, designed for exactly this type of impossible situation. It's unknown human vessels. This is Council Fleet Admiral Vex. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions. The response came back immediately, in perfectly clear galactic standard language. This is Admiral Kim of the Terran Defense Fleet. We received a distress call. We're here to help. Those simple words sent shockwaves through every Council ship. In the system, quarantined Deathworlders hadn't come as conquerors or raiders. They had come as rescuers. The space around Verdania Prime suddenly filled with 47 dark shapes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The human fleet materialized from quantum jump in a formation so precise it looked like a single organism spreading its wings. Each ship was different from Council vessels in ways that made experienced military officers deeply uncomfortable, where Council ships were built with smooth curves and elegant lines. Human vessels looked angry. Sharp angles cut through their hulls like scars. Weapon ports studied their surfaces in patterns that suggested their builders had learned warfare through necessity rather than theory. These weren't ships designed to look impressive at diplomatic ceremonies. They were tools built for one purpose: winning fights. Admiral Kim's voice came through the communication channels, with a calmness that somehow made her words more frightening than any battle cry.
Council Fleet Admiral Vex, we're taking immediate chat.
Action against Void Swarm positions. Recommend you maintain safe distance until we assess the situation. Before Vex could respond, The human ships began moving in ways that violated everything he knew about space combat. Council doctrine called for careful positioning, measured approaches, and coordinated firing patterns. The humans simply charged. Straight at the enemy, Lieutenant Commander. Park's fighter squadron launched from the UES Defiance like angry wasps from a disturbed hive. His voice crackled over the tactical channel. Reaper Squadron, we're going in fast and hard. The bugs have atmospheric processors set up in grid pattern 77 Alpha. Our job is to break those machines before they strip the planet's air supply. The Council observers watching from their safe distance couldn't believe what they were seeing. Park's fighters dove straight down into Verdania Prime's atmosphere, directly through the thickest concentration of Void Swarm drones. Any sane pilot would have tried to find a safer approach route. Reaper Leader, you're flying into a kill zone, came a panicked transmission from a Council tactical officer. Recommend alternate approach vector. Park's laugh came back over the channel. Thanks for the warning, but we've got this. Hey, watch us light up these bug-eyed monsters. The first human fighter to reach the atmospheric processors did something. That made every Council officer gasp in horror. Instead of firing missiles from a safe distance, the pilot flew his ship directly into the alien machine at full throttle. The explosion vaporized both the fighter and the entire processing station. Reaper 3 is down, Park reported with the same tone someone might use to discuss the weather. Good hit, though. That processor won't be sucking up any more atmosphere. More human pilots followed the same suicidal tactic. They rammed their fighters into Void Swarm installations, detonated explosive charges at point-blank range, and flew through enemy formations that should have shredded their ships to pieces. What horrified the Council observers most wasn't the violence, it was how casual the humans sounded while doing it. Nice fireworks. Reaper 7. Thanks, Leader. Ain't anyone else see those big ugly ones with the drill attachments? I'm gonna go say hello. The Void Swarm, which had conquered hundreds of worlds through overwhelming numbers and brutal efficiency, suddenly faced an enemy that seemed just as willing to die fighting as they were to live consuming. Human pilots flew their damaged fighters on suicide runs rather than retreat. Damaged ships continued attacking even as their hulls split open to space. Admiral. Dex watched in fascination and terror as the human assault unfolded. By the ancestors, he whispered to his tactical officer. They fight like the swarm itself. But there was one crucial difference that became clear as the battle continued. The Void Swarm fought to consume and destroy because that was their nature. The humans fought with the same desperate ferocity, but for a completely different reason. Every transmission from the human pilots mentioned the people on the planet below. Every suicidal attack run was dedicated to buying more time for civilian evacuations. When Reaper Squadron finally ran out of fighters, Park's last words over the channel were, "Tell the ground teams they've got clear skies for the next 20 minutes. Make it count." The Council had spent 50 years believing humans were monsters because they were so good at fighting. Now they were learning something that would change their understanding of the galaxy forever. Sometimes, the most dangerous people were also the most willing to die for strangers. The drop pods fell through Verdania Prime's atmosphere like burning meteors, each one carrying 12 human marines in full combat gear. From the ground, they looked like shooting stars, but the Void Swarm drones tracking them knew better. These weren't celestial objects. They were weapons aimed directly at the planet's surface. Major Han's pod hit the ground first, its impact crushing 3 swarm drones beneath its armored hull. She kicked open the door before the dust settled, her rifle already firing at the creatures surrounding the landing zone. Around her, 11 other pods slammed into the earth with thunderous crashes. "All right, Marines, you know the drill." Han's voice crackled through their helmet communicators. Priority 1 is civilian evacuation. Priority 2 is staying alive long enough to evacuate more civilians. Questions? "Ma'am, what's priority 3? Asked Sergeant Yoon, checking his ammunition count. "There is no priority 3. We don't leave until everyone's safe." The nearest Cathara settlement was 2 kilometers away through terrain now crawling with Void Swarm creatures. The peaceful plant-like aliens had built their homes among living trees that sang in harmony with the wind. Now those same trees lay scattered like broken bones. Their songs silenced forever. Han's Marines moved through the devastation in perfect formation, their training evident in every step. They had practiced urban combat in environments ranging from Arctic wastelands to volcanic hellscapes. This was just another day at the office, except the office was trying to eat them. The first group of Cathara civilians they found were huddled in what remained of a community center. Their delicate features streaked with tears that glowed pale blue in the dim light. When the armored humans burst through the ruined walls, many of the aliens screamed in terror. To them, these creatures looked like mechanical monsters, all hard edges and threatening angles. "Easy there, folks," Han said, removing her helmet, to reveal a tired but kind human face. "We're here to get you out. Can everyone walk?" The eldest Cathara, a being whose bark-like skin showed centuries of growth rings, stared at her in amazement. You're human. The Deathworld species. That's right. And right now, this Deathworld species is your best friend. Let's move." What followed was an 18-hour nightmare that pushed human endurance to its absolute limits. Han's Marines carried Cathara children who were too frightened to walk. They supported elderly civilians whose root systems couldn't handle the rough terrain. They fought running battles with Void Swarm drones while shepherding hundreds of refugees toward the extraction points. Private Kim hadn't slept in 26 hours. His armor's medical systems were pumping stimulants directly into his bloodstream to keep him conscious. 3 of his ribs were cracked from a swarm drone's impact, and his left shoulder felt like it was on fire. But when he saw a young Cathara separated from her family group, he didn't hesitate. "Hey there, little one," he said, kneeling down despite the pain. "Want a piggyback ride?" The child looked at him with eyes like liquid starlight, too scared to speak. Kim gently lifted her onto his shoulders and continued marching toward safety, his rifle ready, despite the added weight. When the first Council rescue ships finally arrived, their crews couldn't believe what they were witnessing. Human soldiers who should have collapsed from exhaustion hours ago were still fighting. They held defensive perimeters around evacuation zones with a determination that bordered on supernatural. Even when ammunition ran low, they used improvised weapons. Even when their armor failed, they kept fighting. Council medics tried to treat wounded humans and discovered their physiology was even more terrifying than the stories suggested. One Marine had been fighting for 6 hours with internal bleeding that would have killed most species in minutes. Another continued operating heavy weapons with a broken arm, her face showing pain but her hands steady. How are they still functioning? A Council medical officer asked his human counterpart. The human medic just shrugged. "It's Tuesday. Ask me something hard." By the time the evacuation was complete, Han's original force of 400 Marines had been reduced to fewer than 200 combat-effective soldiers. But they had saved every single Cathara civilian in their sector. Over 3,000 lives pulled from certain death. The Council forces witnessed something that day that would haunt their dreams for years to come. They watched beings who were supposed to be savage monsters risk everything to save complete strangers. And they began to understand that maybe they had been wrong about what made humans truly dangerous. The Void Swarm had consumed 437 worlds over the past millennium. Each conquest had taught them something new about warfare, and their hive minds stored every lesson in its collective memory. But in all those centuries of destruction, they had never faced anything quite like humans. The first adaptation appeared on the 3rd day of fighting. Swarm drones that had been vulnerable to human explosive tactics suddenly sprouted thick, chitinous armor plating. The shells were designed specifically to absorb and redirect blast forces, turning human grenades into harmless light shows. "Well, that's new," muttered Corporal Jang, as his grenade bounced off a drone's back without leaving so much as a scratch. The creature turned toward him with what looked almost like a smug expression on its insectoid face. But the swarm had made one crucial mistake. They assumed humans would keep using the same tactics once those tactics stopped working. Jang switched to armor-piercing rounds and put 3 shots through the drone's new shell before it could react. Evolution's great and all, but bullets are still bullets. The real problem emerged when the swarm began targeting human weaknesses systematically. Captain Cho watched from the bridge of the UES Thunder as new bioforms emerged from the planet's surface. These weren't the mindless drones they had been fighting. These creatures moved with intelligence, coordinating their attacks and focusing fire on critical ship systems. "Captain, they're not just shooting at us randomly anymore," reported Lieutenant Min from the weapons station. "They're targeting our engines, communication arrays, and life support systems specifically." One of the new swarm variants had developed projectile spines that could penetrate human ship armor. Another had evolved electromagnetic pulse organs that disabled electronic systems. A third variant grew specialized appendages designed to tear through human spacesuits, having somehow analyzed the weak points in their construction. They're learning from every engagement, Cho realized with growing horror. Every time we kill one, the others get a little bit better at killing us. The Thunder shuddered under a coordinated assault from 12 of the new bioforms. Alarms screamed throughout the ship as critical systems failed one by one. The main engines went offline first, leaving them unable to maneuver, then the weapons. Systems flickered and died. Finally, a massive bioelectric pulse fried their primary communication array. "Engineering, I need those engines back online now," Cho barked into her emergency communicator. "Working on it, Captain," came the reply from Chief Engineer Park. "But we're having to rebuild half the power couplings from scratch. The bugs seem to know exactly where to hit us." What followed was perhaps the most terrifying 12 hours of the entire battle. Human engineers crawled through damaged ship sections while void swarm creatures tried to break through the hull. They performed emergency repairs with enemy fire hitting their work areas. They rewired critical systems while the ship shook from constant impacts. Chief Park found himself welding power conduits back together while standing in a corridor that had lost atmosphere. His emergency suit kept him alive, but he could see swarm creatures trying to claw their way through the outer HULL, just meters from his position. "This is insane," he muttered to himself. "I'm fixing a spaceship while bugs try to eat me through the walls." But humans had their own kind of adaptation, and it didn't require biological evolution. It required something the swarm couldn't understand: creativity. While the void swarm took hours or days to evolve new bioforms, human tactical networks shared information at the speed of light. When Captain Cho discovered that swarm creatures were vulnerable to specific radio frequencies, every human ship in the fleet knew about it within minutes. When Major Han's ground forces learned that the new armored drones had weak spots at the joint connections, that information was immediately uploaded to every Marine's combat system. The battle became a deadly game of adaptation and counter-adaptation. The swarm would evolve a new attack form, and humans would develop a countermeasure within hours. Humans would create a new weapon, and the swarm would adapt defenses by the next day. "It's like fighting our own reflection," Admiral Kim observed. "From the Defiance's command center, they learn from us, we learn from them, and everybody gets better at killing." But there was one crucial difference between the two species. The Void Swarm adapted through biological evolution, a process that required time and resources. Humans adapted through intelligence, communication, pure stubborn refusal to give up. When the swarm developed creatures immune to human explosives, humans started using kinetic weapons. When those stopped working, they switched to energy beams. When energy beams failed, they improvised new weapons from whatever materials they could find. The swarm could evolve faster than any species they had ever encountered. But humans could think faster than anything in the galaxy. The makeshift laboratory buzzed with nervous energy as two of the galaxy's most unlikely partners worked side by side. Botanist Prime Nara's delicate bark-like fingers moved carefully over alien specimens, while Dr. Jin, the human xenobiologist, peered through a microscope that looked crude compared to Kithara biotechnology. "Your people are fascinating," Nara said softly, her voice like wind through leaves. "Everything I was taught about humans suggested you were incapable of scientific curiosity. Yet here you are, asking questions I never thought to ask." Dr. Jin looked up from her microscope with a tired smile. "Yeah, well, our reputation tends to focus on the exploding things part of our skill set. People forget we're pretty good at figuring things out, too." They had been working together for 6 hours straight, analyzing dead Void Swarm drones that human soldiers had dragged into their improvised research station. The Cathara brought their deep understanding of biological systems. The humans brought aggressive curiosity and a willingness to try dangerous experiments. Look at this neural pathway. Nara pointed to a translucent section of swarm tissue. It's not just connecting to the creature's brain, it's connecting to something else entirely. Dr. Jin adjusted the microscope settings and whistled softly. That's not a normal nerve cluster. It's a communication antenna. These things are all linked together in some kind of biological network. The breakthrough came when they discovered that the swarm's entire hive mind operated on a specific bioelectrical frequency. Every drone, every ship, every creature was connected through quantum-entangled neural pathways that allowed instant communication across vast distances. If we could disrupt that frequency, ... double quotes, Nara began. The whole network would collapse, Dr. Jin finished. They'd lose coordination completely. While scientists made discoveries, something equally important was happening throughout the refugee camps. Council Admiral Vex had finally overcome his species' instinctive terror of humans. Long enough to coordinate joint operations with Admiral Kim. Their first meeting took place via hologram, with Vex's security detail insisting on maintaining safe distance. Your tactical data is remarkable, Dex admitted reluctantly. We've been fighting the Void Swarm for centuries, but never with such ... direct methods. Admiral Kim's image flickered slightly as she smiled. Direct is putting it politely. Most folks just call us crazy. Perhaps, Vex said, his 4 eyes blinking independently. But your craziness is saving lives. My fleet will coordinate with yours on the next assault wave. The real change happened on the ground, where human Marines and Cathara civilians were learning that 50 years of propaganda had been built on fear rather than fact. Corporal Sue sat outside a medical tent, carefully feeding soup to a young Cathara, whose root system had been damaged by swarm acid. The child's parent watched nervously as the armored human used a spoon designed for her own species to feed someone whose mouth was completely different. Sue had spent 20 minutes figuring out the right angle and pressure to avoid causing discomfort. There you go, little one, Sue said gently. I know it tastes weird, but human food has lots of nutrients that should help your roots heal. The child looked up at her with eyes like liquid starlight and made a sound that Sue's translator interpreted as thank you. The parent moved closer, no longer afraid. We were told your kind felt no compassion, the adult Cathara said hesitantly. Sue shrugged, still focused on feeding the child. Yeah, we get that a lot. Turns out when you spend all your time fighting monsters, people assume you are monsters. But we only fight things that try to hurt innocent folks. The breakthrough moment came when the same Cathara child developed a severe allergic reaction to something in the air. Her breathing passages began to close, and Cathara medicine had no treatment for the specific toxin the Void Swarm had released into the atmosphere. Corporal Sue made a decision that would have terrified any council medic. She administered an experimental human drug designed to counteract biological warfare agents. The dosage calculations were pure guesswork. Since no one had ever tried treating a Cathara with human medicine before, it worked perfectly. Within minutes, the child's breathing returned to normal. Her root system showed signs of rapid healing. Her bioluminescent spots brightened to healthy levels. The experimental treatment had not only saved her life, but accelerated her recovery beyond anything. Cathara medicine could achieve word spread through the refugee camps like wildfire. The Deathworld species, that everyone feared, had just saved a child using medicine that shouldn't have worked on alien biology. Human medics found themselves treating patients from 6 different species, adapting their techniques and sharing their knowledge freely. Admiral Vex received the report while coordinating the next phase of the battle. For the first time in his long military career, he looked forward to working with humans rather than fearing them. Perhaps, he told his staff, we have been wrong about what makes a species truly civilized. The weapon that would decide the fate. A Verdania Prime looked nothing like the galaxy expected. Instead of massive cannons or energy beams, human engineers had built what appeared to be oversized speaker systems. These harmonic resonance devices had been constructed in just 18 hours, using parts scavenged from damaged ships and alien technology nobody fully understood. Chief Engineer Park wiped sweat from her forehead as she made final adjustments to the frequency calibrator. Admiral, I'm going to be honest with you. We're basically turning every ship in the fleet into a giant tuning fork and hoping it doesn't shake us apart in the process. Admiral Kim nodded grimly. What are our chances of success? Well, the good news is that Dr. Jin's calculations show a 90% probability of disrupting swarm coordination. The bad news is there's also a 40% chance we'll fry every electronic system in our own ships when we fire this thing. And the worst news. Park grinned despite the circumstances. Somebody's got to get inside that big, ugly hive ship floating up there and plant the amplifier charges manually. The harmonic pulse won't penetrate deep enough without them. Everyone looked up through the bridge windows at the massive bioconstruct hanging in Verdania Prime's upper atmosphere like a cancerous moon. The hive ship was easily 10 kilometers long, its surface crawling with defensive organisms that looked like a nightmare designed by an insane artist. I'll take a boarding party, Kim said simply. Admiral, with respect, that's suicide, Captain Lee protested. We don't know what's inside that thing. Interior could be filled with acid, poison, gas, or worse. Kim was already checking her sidearm and combat gear. Think it's a good thing humans are hard to kill. Besides, somebody has to do it, and I'm not asking my people to go somewhere I wouldn't go myself. The combined human and council fleets moved into position around the hive ship like hunters, surrounding a wounded but still dangerous animal. The swarm creatures seemed to sense something was wrong, their movements becoming more agitated as the harmonic weapons charged to full power. All ships, this is Admiral Kim. Her voice echoed across dozens of vessels. On my mark, we light up every harmonic projector simultaneously. Give that thing the worst headache in galactic history. The resonance weapons fired at exactly the same moment, sending coordinated sound waves through space at frequencies specifically tuned to disrupt the swarm's bioneural network. The effect was immediate and devastating. Across the planet's surface, swarm drones began stumbling and falling as their hive mind connection shattered like glass. But the hive ship itself remained operational, its massive biomass providing enough shielding to protect its core systems. That's when Kim and her boarding party launched their assault shuttles directly at the creature's underbelly. Getting inside the hive ship was like being swallowed by a living nightmare. The walls pulsed with organic rhythms that sounded almost like heartbeats. Bioluminescent veins ran along the ceiling, casting eerie blue light on surfaces that felt warm and disturbingly soft underfoot. Stay close and watch your six, Kim warned her team as they moved through corridors that seemed to reshape themselves when nobody was looking. This thing's still alive, and it knows we're here. The deeper they went, the worse it became. The walls weren't just alive, they were aware. Faces pressed against the organic surfaces from the inside, their expressions frozen in silent screams. These were the absorbed consciousnesses of the swarm's victims. Trapped forever in the hive mean's collective memory, Sergeant Min stopped walking, his face pale behind his helmet visor. Admiral, are those... ... are those people? Kim looked at the faces in the walls and felt something cold settle in her stomach. Some of them looked almost human. Others were clearly alien species she'd never seen before. All of them were trying to communicate, their mouths moving soundlessly behind the biomembrane. Keep moving, Marine, she ordered, though her own voice was shakier than usual. We've got a job to finish. The psychological pressure grew worse as they approached the hive ship's core. The walls began whispering in languages that translated directly into their minds, speaking the names of loved ones, reciting childhood, memories, promising peaceful death. If they would just stop fighting and join the collective, most species would have broken under the mental assault. But humans had grown up on a world that tried to kill them every day. Their minds were already used to pushing through fear, pain, and despair. When they finally reached the core chamber, Kim and her team planted the harmonic amplifiers with steady hands, despite the horror surrounding them. The countdown began immediately. Time to go home, Kim announced. This party's about to get very loud. The harmonic charges detonated deep inside the hive ship, with a sound that couldn't be heard but could be felt in every living cell within 1,000 kilometers. The bioneural network that had connected billions of void swarm creatures across the planet collapsed instantly.
Ow.
Like a spider web touched by flame. On the surface of Verdania Prime, the change was immediate and miraculous.
Ow.
Swarm drones that had been moving in perfect coordination suddenly stumbled around like confused insects. The massive harvesting machines stopped their relentless consumption and began attacking each other. Without the hive mind to guide them, individual swarm creatures reverted to basic survival instincts that made them fight anything that moved, including their former allies. Botanist Prime Nara watched from her laboratory as the forest eating. Monsters that had terrorized her world for days began tearing each other apart. Tears of relief streamed down her bark-like cheeks as she activated her communication system. All Cathara settlements. This is Botanist Prime Nara. The swarm has been broken. Our world is saved. The humans have saved us all. The celebration that followed could be heard from orbit. 6 billion Cathara voices rose in a song of gratitude that made their crystal cities ring like bells. Children who had hidden in underground shelters for days emerged into sunlight that no longer carried the shadow of certain death. Families separated by the chaos of evacuation found each other again in refugee camps that had become festivals of joy, but perhaps the most profound change wasn't on the planet's surface. It was in the minds of every council species representative who had witnessed the battle. Admiral Vex stood on his flagship's observation deck, watching human ships assist with cleanup operations. These same vessels that had terrified him just days ago were now carefully removing swarm debris and helping repair damaged infrastructure. Their crews worked alongside council engineers with the same dedication they had shown in combat. I don't understand them, Dex admitted to his aide. Everything we were told about humans suggested they were savage conquerors, but they fought harder to save strangers than most species fight to save themselves. His aide, a young officer who had watched the entire battle unfold, nodded thoughtfully. Perhaps, Admiral, we confuse strength with savagery. They are definitely the most dangerous species we've ever encountered. But dangerous to whom? The formal debriefing session took place aboard a neutral council vessel, with representatives from 12 different species in attendance. Admiral Kim sat at the conference table, still wearing her combat fatigues, her hair showing the effects of days spent inside a helmet. Around her, diplomats in elegant robes spoke in careful, measured tones about treaties and protocols. The Terran Defense Fleet's actions, while effective, did violate numerous quarantine regulations, Ambassador Vell stated primly. We must consider the precedent this sets. Kim leaned back in her chair and smiled tiredly. You're absolutely right. Ambassador, we broke your rules. We ignored your protocols. Showed up uninvited to a fight that wasn't technically ours. Her expression grew serious. And we'd do it again tomorrow if we had to. The room fell silent. Several diplomats shifted, uncomfortably in their seats. The question isn't whether we broke your rules, Kim continued. The question is whether those rules are more important than the lives we saved. 6 billion people are alive today because we ignored protocol. You tell me if that was the wrong choice. Botanist Prime Nara rose from her seat, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had just watched her entire world almost die. If I may speak, honored representatives, the humans came to our aid when no one else could. They asked for nothing in return. They sacrificed their own lives to protect complete strangers from a species they had never encountered before. She paused, looking around the room at faces representing civilizations that had feared humanity for half a century. We have spent 50 years telling ourselves that these people were too dangerous to join galactic society. But I submit to this council that they are not too dangerous. They are exactly as dangerous as they need to be to protect innocent life. Any species willing to die for strangers they have never met is not our enemy. They are the best friends we could ever hope to have. The vote to lift humanity's quarantine status was unanimous. 3 months later, the Youth Defiance took its place among the Council fleet as humanity's first official representative in galactic civilization. Admiral Kim kept her promise to maintain cooperative relations, establishing joint training programs and shared technology initiatives. But everyone understood the real message that had been sent. The galaxy's most dangerous species had revealed their true nature, not through conquest or intimidation, but through sacrifice and compassion. The Deathworlders had become the galaxy's guardians, and the universe was a safer place because of it.